Hello everybody and welcome back. I did just finish filming my 1-year review on the Franchi Affinity Elite. Now I'm going to go ahead and break this gun down and do a cleaning on it. Again, I haven't cleaned this gun in maybe like 3 to 5 hunts, so it's probably pretty dirty. These black cloud shells are definitely a little bit dirtier than the Winchesters. And I was kind of using them in kind of more of the late season goose hunt. So yeah, let's jump right into breaking this gun down. This is going to be a very in-depth tear down and cleaning and reassembly of the Franchi Affinity Elite. I might actually break out some of these parts into their own videos of tearing down that bolt assembly as well. I know there's a few people that had questions about that. So maybe separate those out and make them into their own little short videos out of this. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead, swap over to the other camera, and let's jump right into it. Alright, so first things first, I got the gun propped up, got the camera focused on it. I'll be able to zoom in on certain areas when I'm taking apart smaller pieces that, require a little bit more attention. But yeah, first thing we need to do is get the ShotKam off of here. I'm going to go ahead and grab my ShotKam wrench that's actually over here in my camera case. I always take it out with me when I'm out on hunts. It's pretty simple. It's just one bolt right here. Go ahead, loosen that. I usually loosen it further than it needs to be to take it off. Alright, there we go. Got the ShotKam off. Even for leaving that on there the entire season, not actually much oil marks on there. Usually have a cloth with oil on it that I leave in my case all the time. Just go ahead, rub that off. That's pretty good. I do have a mark on here right here, so I do know how far to put that ShotKam on every time, even if I do go ahead and take it off there. Okay, now that we got that off, let's go ahead and remove the choke. I usually try to oil the choke before I put it in, so hopefully there's still some good oil on here. Actually, not much oil at all. It's actually pretty dry in there. So I'm going to go ahead, take my oil rag, give this a wipe down. A little bit of black soot on there. Again, this is the long range choke by Trulock. I leave this in my gun the entire season. I'm not going to ever swap it out again. I did go ahead and try the mid-range and just couldn't really hit anything really that well with it. Kind of see in there. It's a little bit of soot. We'll go ahead, we'll clean that out later when we'll go ahead and clean the barrel out. I'll toss that to the side right now. Now let's go ahead and remove this barrel. So just got to undo this end cap right here. There is kind of a certain technique to putting this on as well as taking it off. Always never really know if the bolt's supposed to be back or forward. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be forward, but usually just give it a try. And if it doesn't work, then it's the opposite. I'm going to lightly allow this to come forward. There you go. You can see that popped off right there. And now, just go ahead, slide that off. Now I have the barrel in my hand here, and go ahead and remove the plastic sheathing. There is a metal component right in here though that I will go ahead and oil as well. You don't want that to go get rusted. But that is pretty much the tear down of the barrel. Again, you can see it is pretty dirty. Let's take a look, see if you can see down it. A little bit of residue in there as well. That is from those black cloud shells. You can just see the powder, unburnt powder right on there as well. Alright, let's keep on going, doing the whole tear down. And after I'm done tearing it down, then I will go ahead and get into the cleaning portion. I'm going to go ahead and just remove this. Just leave the cap attached to that. Now we can go ahead and I think next we're going to go and remove the bolt. So with this extra large long charging handle, I'm actually going to go ahead and move the camera up a little bit. It looks like I keep taking stuff out of frame. So if anything, I want the camera to be up higher. Probably right in there. Alright, that's a little bit better. Yeah. With this larger extended charging handle, it does make the ease of removal very easy. You just grab right a hold of it, pull that out, and now this will come forward. And there's your bolt. Again, a large amount of unburnt powder all over this. I'm going to set this down in my case, but I'm going to go grab some paper towels as well. Now this metal guide piece will slide right off the end, as well as the spring here. This just slides off the end as well. There's a little bit of groove up here near the end that kind of catches on, but I like to oil this as well. You don't want the spring to get all rusty. Like I said, I'm going to go grab some paper towel now, and we'll come back, probably remove the plug. Alright, so now let's go ahead and remove the plug out of this gun. Sometimes I use these like C-clip ring retainers to be able to pull that out. I really should just get the proper tool for the job. But right now I'm going to use these small needle nose pliers. Just kind of put those in here. And they will slip off a few times, but I just kind of rock this back and forth. Quite a bit harder to get back in with these, but usually get my wife to help me with that, have her compress this plug while I go ahead and shove it in. But it's off there now. You want to make sure you hold this so it doesn't go shooting off. Tell I have lots of oil all over this. I don't want my guns rusting. But there is a thing as to too much oil in these guns. Again, lots of nice oil on this spring in here. You can see this difference between the plug spring and the outside kind of this inertia spring. The inertia spring is a lot larger than the one that holds the plug in. This should look pretty clean in there. Hopefully quite a bit of oil. Inside of here, there's that bright orange follower. Now that I've taken the plug out, that as well will just kind of fall out the end. I'm actually going to shove the plug in from this way to kind of help it get a bit of a little pressure. You know, not the proper tool for the job again, but it works. Bunch of unburnt powder all over this. Now we can probably see straight down there. Yep, nice and oily. No rust in there. I don't think there's so much of a thing as putting too much oil in here. That's we're getting down there now. Probably the last thing to do is to pull out the trigger assembly. So to do this, I usually like to use the end cap on my Benelli Supernova. I'm not sure why they didn't do it on this end cap, but the one on the Supernova is the exact correct size that you're able to shove this out, this pin in here, and then the trigger assembly will fall right out. But for now, I'm just going to use these needle nose pliers. I'm just going to go ahead, put these straight down on this pin. Just slight pressure. That comes right out the other side. You do want to pay attention to the orientation this goes in as well. But with that pin removed, this trigger assembly will come right out of there now. Just like that. Wow. Again, the amount of unburnt powder all over this thing. And that is the reason right there, folks, as to why you clean your gun as well as oiling them so they don't rust. But that right there will create a shell from firing if this hammer is not able to hit that primer hard enough. That is from all these black cloud shells. Now, pretty much just have the frame of the gun here. I'm not going to go ahead tear down the stock. I will show you what I do maintenance wise on it, but the only thing in here is the counterweight, and that just threads on the end of the bolt here, and we have our shims up here. I did a few videos on how to shim this gun, so if you want to know how to install that counterweight as well as shim this gun, look up my other videos. But as for tear down on this, we're pretty much there. There's nothing left here besides the frame. Now we're going to go ahead and start the cleaning process. So for the cleaning process, definitely want to make sure that you have a ton of paper towels. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the black cloud and Winchester shells were from my last video. I also have this small gun cleaning kit for 22, but it comes with gun oil. So I've been using this gun oil. Any gun oil will do though. This has nitro solvent as well. Usually don't really like to use much of the nitro on it. And I like to have a 12 gauge cleaning brush. I'll go ahead and assemble a rod to be able to push that through now. And then I'll probably come back and we'll start going ahead cleaning this gun. Again, make sure you have lots of paper towel, lots of solvent, lots of oil, and lots of compressed air. I'm going to be using a lot of compressed air to kind of blow things out and make sure there's no debris left in them. Here are a few more components that I like to use. Good old Remington oil. This one is especially good for using on the trigger assembly. You definitely don't want a high viscosity oil getting in there. That will mess up your shells, allow that hammer not to hit hard enough, send that primer in. I also use Hoppy's or Hope's number 9. And then the good old Ballistol. This stuff has many purposes. You either like the smell or you don't. I start to like it usually at first, and then throughout the night usually starts to get a little overpowering when it smells up the entire house. This stuff does work wonders. It is really great for kind of the outsides of the gun. I wouldn't use this. Kind of leaves a little bit of a waxy residue on stuff, so I wouldn't really put it on the internals, especially not the trigger assembly. Now we're going to go ahead and start actually oiling everything up, cleaning everything up, and then go ahead and reassemble the gun. So, first things first, I usually like to wipe off all the oil that's on here, any dirt, any old residue, off all the pieces first. So I'm just going to kind of do this real quick on camera. Again, I want to pay close attention to in here there's this metal retaining ring. Get all that oil off it, and then I'm going to oil it up again really well. But the rest of this sheathing is all plastic, so won't worry about that too much. Then we'll go to the barrel, wipe off that oil, get all that unburnt powder off of it. Let's see all that powder right there. Go ahead and clean the inside of the barrel too after I'm done wiping everything off with the paper towel. Inside here. I don't worry too much about under this rib. There's quite a bit of it's like dirt and stuff getting underneath there right now. That's probably just because I oil it so well in there, so nothing rust. That is the one spot that I'm actually seeing a little bit of rust on my Benelli Supernova. is right at one of these points, so I want to make sure that's oiled really well. I guess just a quick wipe of the paper towel in there would remove any sort of debris that's on there. And that's pretty much it for the barrel for now. Now for the spring, just going to kind of just do a quick dab off. You can kind of run it through the paper towel. That's fine. This piece has a lot of oil on it. Kind of this guide part. A lot of unburnt powder on this end. See it all over my hands now. Don't worry about getting anything too dirty where you're wiping till you're finished with this task. So it'll be unburnt powder all over the place. Alright, wiping here. You can kind of see how much I've already removed. That's pretty good. Again, this next spring, this one doesn't get too dirty just because this is only inside the plug. It's definitely one though that if you drop your gun in the water, you're going to want to take out and make sure you oil this sort of stuff really thoroughly. This is that plug tube clip. I always put a lot of oil on this. So wipe it all out now. Plastic plug never really gets dirty at all. Again, just oil on it, which don't worry about that piece that much. The follower, we'll wipe all this unburnt powder off, make it nice and shiny orange again. So, we're getting there now. See, there's almost all that powder's off it now. Inside, a little bit of dirty powder and oil in here. Again, just a quick wipe out. Pin has oil all over it. That's clean. Trigger assembly I'm going to skip for now, as well as the bolt. Let's go to just giving this a quick wipe down. Quite a bit of oil on the paper towel now, so it's actually working to kind of oil the gun up at the same time that I'm wiping all the unburnt powder out of it. Let's get another close-up of, hopefully you're able to see some of that unburnt powder in there. Before I go ahead and wipe it all out, there is a metal piece in here, the charging handle over here on the side. Kind of wipe behind that pretty well. It's kind of a little catch area underneath there that powder likes to sit. That is what the compressed air is for, getting in those sort of spots. And now, shove that paper towel all the way down to the bottom. Do up in here. Pretty much wipe down any area you see excess oil or unburnt powder. If you do that, you'll be pretty good. Then we're going to go ahead, re-oil it back up. Yikes. The amount of unburnt powder in here. Okay, so this has only been about 3 to 5 hunts. It's probably pretty hard to see. Let me actually grab my phone and shine the flashlight down in there. There you can see a pretty good idea of how much unburnt powder there is down in there. Some of that's from me wiping with the paper towel and shoving it near the end of the gun here. But now I'm going to go ahead and shove this paper towel in here and pull that all towards the bottom of the gun. Hopefully get it out of here. Alright, that's quite a bit better. Now I'm going to take this gun out to the garage. I'm just going to take it to the air compressor instead of using compressed air. But all these pieces, parts that have unburnt powder on them that I wiped off just now, go ahead, hit them with the compressed air, blow everything out really well, and make sure that there's no more powder on them. But before I do that, let's go ahead and take apart the trigger assembly as well as the bolt. So let's get a nice clean piece of paper towel here for these components to sit on. I'm going to take it apart first before going ahead and wiping everything off. There's lots of people that were talking about this noise in here. You can hear that spring in there bouncing back and forth. That is normal. One thing you want to pay very close attention to is this little notch on here. That notch on this pin here faces downward in the orientation that I have it right now, or away from the front of the gun. So this would be pointed towards the rear end of the gun. Then I go ahead, you're going to want to pull out this pin over here on the side. I'm actually going to go ahead and sit down now for this part and move the camera a little bit closer. But yeah, like I was saying, you're going to want to pull this pin out, and you're also going to want to hold this back here. So I usually put my finger on both ends and pull this out. It comes out pretty easy. It's just a little bit rubber piece there, so that pin is now out. So remove that. And the reason you hold this end is because the spring right here on this firing pin will shoot that firing pin out of there. That'll be pretty hard to find. So go ahead and remove that. And now we can go ahead and remove this pin here, and then this bolt will just come right out of there. Sorry if I'm not getting all the terminology of these pieces correctly, but you get the gist of tearing it down. But you'll see that this will not come out of there until that pin comes out of there. So just kind of give it a quick shake. Now you'll see that fell out of there. The firing pin does go right through that hole, and again there is this line on the top that points near the rear of the gun. Now we can go ahead, separate these pieces. Again, lots more unburnt powder all over this piece. And now the part that was making that noise back and forth is this large spring that sits down in there. So that is the complete teardown on the bolt assembly on the Franchi Affinity Elite. Now let's go ahead and clean it all up. Not going to do a real thorough cleaning right now, or like we did on the rest of the gun. Just going to do a quick wipe down to get all that powder and oil off it. Then when we go to put it back together, we'll oil it up nicely. Do one final cleaning, polish everything up. That starts shining pretty nicely. Just a quick wipe. This doesn't get too dirty. The spring, the firing pin, is probably not very dirty either. Nope. Looks pretty clean. And this large bolt piece usually has a decent amount of unburnt powder on it, all over in all these grooves. Just going to go ahead and wipe it all down. all the various sides and notches on this. Pretty good back there. On the front, there's all that powder. So down in here is not too bad. That's where that spring sits at. Well, we are already in a lot better shape than we were when we started. So, actually looks pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and do a quick wipe down on the trigger assembly. Getting all that unburnt powder. I know I keep saying it, but it's just everywhere. And just think on all these gas guns. That goes everywhere inside of that gun. Kind of want to pay attention where you're wiping to so you're not wiping over parts that you already cleaned. I don't take the trigger assembly apart any further than right here. There are various pins and other parts and pieces that you could take apart. This spring here, I don't really see a need to do that. Usually wiping off the rest of this powder in here and then blowing it off, giving it a quick oil. Usually works pretty good. So that's the majority of the unburnt powder off. Now, just like the other pieces, I'm going to take this out to the air gun, give it a quick blow off with the compressor, a little bit more cleaning and polishing, then I'll be back and we'll go ahead and reassemble the gun and get it oiled up. Alright, so I have things cleaned up pretty nicely. I did a lot of blowing off with the air compressor off camera. Some people may say that I'm a little too meticulous. You can see this trigger assembly now has none of that unburnt powder. Good thing that does blow off pretty easily. But yeah, you can go ahead and you can actually flip this onto fire and pull the trigger, and then the hammer will release. You're able to clean in this area a little bit better in that way. Also, you can take the spring off of here and clean down in there a little bit better. Watch this little washer that is holding on the spring though. You want to make sure that that doesn't go flying off somewhere. But yeah, go ahead, lock the hammer back down in place. I think we're ready to go ahead. Let's go ahead and clean the barrel real quick and then start reassembling. So to clean the barrel, I put my 12 gauge cotton on here. It's got a little bit of fluff on it, but I'm just going to go ahead and kind of clean this end a little bit here, and then go ahead and shove it all the way through the other end of the barrel. That should get all the whatever is unburnt out of the barrel. Just kind of a rough cleaning job before we go ahead, oil it up and reassemble. Also going to do this on the choke tube. So show that here on the choke tube. Doesn't like to come back out the other way, so I'm going to remove this now. Pull that choke back off. Looks pretty good. And then lastly, I'm going to go ahead and run this through where the plug goes. So right down in here, there's some debris that can go and collect, so that fits down in there nicely. Run it through a couple times, just kind of brush anything that could potentially be in there, any excess oil, get that all out of there. Alright, I'm going to remove this cotton pad now, because I actually have two of these for 12 gauge. I'm going to put this one on. This is the one that I use for applying oil. Alright, I'll set that one down there. Now we're going to go ahead, oil everything back up, start reassembling. So I think I'm going to spin the camera around, and maybe I'll just move the pieces over here for the bolt. I'll lay a nice clean paper towel down, or somewhat clean. I've used it for a few things already. These are our bits and pieces for our bolt. See how nice and clean they are. This chrome is back to being nice and shiny. But yeah, let's go ahead, drop the large spring down in there. I don't think it matters which way it goes. Looks like it's the same either way to me. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. Now we're going to go ahead and put the chrome piece in here. Again, it is very important that you make sure that this pin up here on top where this little notch is pointed towards the rear of the gun, so that's going to be pointed towards me in this case right now. And it will go ahead and move right now because that firing pin is not in there yet. Spring goes back on the firing pin. Slip that through there. So it should slip through nicely if you have this aligned correctly up here. Now go ahead and pinch this together. Both sides, get that firing pin in there, and then go ahead and insert that pin. So that kind of holds everything in place. Again, that is the assembly of the bolt. It is normal to hear that spring go back and forth like that. You should see the proper action here. And that pin is pointed towards the rear of the gun. So bolt is back together. Go ahead and move that out of the way. Well, I was starting to reassemble the gun, and I actually forgot that I was going to oil it when I was going ahead and reassembling it. So we do have the bolt kind of back in place now. This all back together. To oil this, I like to use the Remington oil. Give it a quick shake. And I'm just going to do this one right on the case. Usually like to just give it a quick squirt like that. Don't worry about it getting in any extra places. And then usually like to kind of work it back in place a little bit. Get it all over everything here. A little bit of excess on there. So then, just a quick wipe down. So we don't have too much excess on there, because that is where that powder, that unburnt powder, will go ahead and stick to quite readily. Alright, so there you go. Bolt is all oiled now. Let's go ahead, do the same thing with the trigger assembly. You know, just kind of a quick squirt and wipe. So like that on that side, that on that side. Really the only reason that I'm doing this is to prevent any sort of corrosion on here. Just get a nice coat of oil on all these components before I go ahead and reassemble them back in place. So trigger assembly is pretty good now. Now down in here, the main frame, usually like to put a little bit in here on that bolt release. It's a metal component right there. Again, just a quick squirt, wipe it all back off. And the rest of these pieces down in here are kind of this metal coated. So I do like to just do a quick squirt kind of on each side of the frame in there again. Pretty much the same thing as when I tore the gun apart, wiping everything off to get all that unburnt powder and any dirt debris off. Just doing the same thing now. Just doing a nice coat of oil on it and wiping it back off. So it's pretty good. Maybe have a little bit of excess up in here. Now, down in this end that the plug goes in, I like to take this cotton and give it a nice... Actually, I'm not going to use the Remington oil on this. I'm going to use the... Let's use this Outers gun oil that I have. Just kind of create a nice coating on here. On each side, get it nice and oiled back up. Maybe dried out a little bit. Alright, nice coating and oil in there. Now I'm just going to take this pad, run it down there, give it a little bit of a spin to coat the internals there where that plug will sit and rest. Okay, that should be good. Yep, nice and shiny down in there. I know it's probably pretty hard to see, but nice light coat of oil on the inside of there. Now we can go ahead and reinsert that plug. So first things first, the orange follower goes in that direction. You'll hear that drop down. This spring, usually like to do a little bit of a nice coat of oil too. I'm going to use the Remington oil for this. Just do 1/2 of a spring at a time, so that's that spring. And now flip it around. Do that side. And this is just really preventing corrosion on the spring. It is metal and it will rust. So that spring goes all the way down in there. Follow it up with your plastic plug. Shove that down in there. Again, you know, there's always a lot of compression on these. And then put your clamp back in. Everyone else knows how to insert a plug, so I'm not going to put that on camera. I'm going to tip it upright, insert that back in, and be right back. Alright, so plug's inserted. You do want to make sure that the clamp that holds it in place is flush with the end. If you have it inserted in there too far, you won't be able to get 3.5 inch shells. This is a 3.5 inch gun, so you want to make sure that you're able to get those all in there. I got some oil on this rag already from kind of spraying on the spring, so just kind of wipe everything off real quick. Now we should be good to go ahead and, let's see, what's next? Let's go ahead and install the trigger assembly. Again, nice and oiled up. I'm going to actually put the hammer back down. So if you just take this and shove it, it'll lock back in place. So, kind of slip this in here. It works better if you kind of start near the front, shove the bolt release in place, and then slide it near to the back, and it will lock in place in kind of a line right here near the back end. You can go ahead and release the bolt release then. Grab your pin, make sure your trigger assembly is nice and lined up with this hole. I can see mine's in a little bit too far right now, so I'm going to pull it out. It actually looks pretty good, so now I'm going to go ahead, insert that pin back in place all the way. Make sure it's nice and aligned on each side. So it's pretty good shape there. Now let's go ahead and put the bolt back in place. I've already oiled this up nicely. Let's put a little bit of a coating of oil on this piece though. So again, my favorite, Remington oil. A little bit on that side, a little bit on this side. And I don't really care to spray this all over the case. Just going to add protection to the gun a little bit more oil on it. Wipe off the excess. And now we're pretty good shape to go ahead and reassemble this. So to reassemble this, usually I start with this guide. It's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to slip that guide over this end, get it going in this area right here. There's a metal slot that it has to line up with in here. Got to pull it out a little bit though, because the bolt actually has to go right in this area as well. So the bolt sits right in there. See that? Fits there nicely. Now this will go ahead and slide in there, but I did forget one thing. You notice how easily this is sliding back in place. We do need the spring to go on there first. So let's go ahead and pull the bolt back off, move all this back out of the way, grab our spring. I'm going to put a little Remington oil on that spring as well and slip this on here. So this one does take a little bit of pressure to get it on, but once it goes, slides on pretty easy. And again, slip that all on there. It'll lock in place right there. Now we can go ahead, put this guide back in place, let a line in there. The bolt fits right in there. Again, once you do this a couple times, everything gets to go pretty easily back in place. We have our charging hammer. There's enough oil on this paper towel already, so just give that a quick wipe. Get oil all over the pin that's going to hold this in place. Now I'm going to go ahead and shove the bolt down and in. And this hammer goes right in here. Right inside this bolt. Nice. Locks in place there. Alright, last thing to do is to clean the barrel real quick. So again, I have the oil pad already on here. I'm just going to put a little bit more oil on this pad because I have some still on here from when I cleared out where the plug went. So now, got a nice layer of oil on here. Bring this down through this end, spin this as I go ahead and shove it down the rest of the barrel. Let's see, come out that end, so that come out there, guide it back into place, pull it back, spin it. And I usually like to do this a couple times down this barrel. Make sure we get a nice coating. If you do have the choke on and are trying to do this, usually doesn't go back through the second time so easily. Alright, so this should be the last time. Alright, that should be pretty good. Take a look down there. Hard for you guys to see probably, but nice and shiny. Really clean down in there. A little bit of residue down here on this end where the choke goes. So take a piece of paper towel and wipe that out real quick. And I think that residue is coming from when I pull that cotton back through. It's kind of scraping off on this end of the barrel. So, see how much was in there. Yeah, it's still in there. So I'm going to go ahead, insert this back through the end of the barrel, shove it all the way down and out, and then just take this off on this end. So when I'm taking it back through, it's not squeegeeing everything all over the inside of the barrel. Yeah, that looks a lot better, a lot cleaner on this end. I'm going to take my paper towel with oil all over it again, wipe off all the components down here on this end. They had a little bit of oil on them from squeegeeing off the cotton pad that I ran through it. Alright, so everything's looking pretty good here. We are now going to go ahead and put the barrel back on. Do have to make sure the sleeve goes onto the barrel first. Again, there's this metal ring right in here, so quick shot of, I'm actually going to use the Ballistol this time. This component doesn't really matter much to the operation of the gun, and usually I use Ballistol for all the outside coatings as well as stuff that doesn't really affect the gun much. So I'm going to go ahead and get a quick shot of that all over in there. Usually I like to use this stuff outside, but for this purpose I'm just gonna squirt it real quick in here. And now this sheath will go ahead and slide onto there. Now let's go ahead and slide the tube into the sheath here. You'll want to make sure that your bolt is in the forward position, and then when you shove this, kind of give it a little twist and wiggle, that'll goes back into place there. Now all we need to do is grab my cap that is still on my sling and reinsert this. Screw that back on in there. Just finger tight. That's all. Again, give it a little shake. Make sure no components are moving. Make sure this gap in here looks good. Gun itself looks pretty good. We're still on safe. Gun is unloaded. Check operation. Looks like everything's working good here. Lock it back. That's working. Release. That works pretty good. Let's make sure that the hammer is actually going to go forward as well. So we'll release the bolt forward, take it off safety, squeeze the trigger. Felt like a normal trigger pull as well. Lock everything back again. Yeah, everything looks pretty good. Last thing that I got to do is I like to coat the entire outside of this gun with Blistol. And that kind of gives it a little bit of a waxy finish, but I'll go ahead, do that, throw it back in the case, and then it will be good for a season. These little holes down here in the end stock as well, I shoot some Remington oil in there. There's some standard Phillips screwdrivers or screws in here that hold on the butt pad, and those will rust. So just make sure you keep those nice and lubricated in there as well. It's always good practice just to kind of give this gun a good once over, cleaning, oiling, especially when you're putting it away for the end of season. One last thing. Got to put the choke back in. So again, Remington oil. A little oil on there. It's always good to make sure your chokes are well lubricated. You don't want these seizing in the end of your barrel and not having to ever be able to get a choke out. So, I'm not going to screw that in all the way right now, but that is a wrap on this video. That is how you go ahead, do a full disassembly and cleaning on the Franchi Affinity Elite. And that's how dirty it usually is after not being fired, or actually for firing it and not cleaning for about 3 to 5 hunts. A lot of just unburnt powder that needs to be cleaned out of the barrel. And then just a nice coating of oil on everything. But yeah, like I said, now this gun is going to be sent in for the RMA warranty on this Cerakote finish here that's chipping off. So I will provide a video update on that when I go ahead and hear some news on that. Hopefully this video has been helpful. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share this video. I have plenty more videos that I'm going to be filming, posting with the Franchi Affinity Elite. One of them being the ballistic gel test of various shot shell sizes and how good they penetrate. Thanks for watching, and make sure you hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. Also make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next videos I will be posting, and leave your questions, comments, and suggestions below.